We are 48 hours away from the 2024 NFL Draft. We've got some final Cleveland Browns draft thoughts, offense and defense. Before you get my final Browns mock tomorrow, your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps growing and growing. Don't miss out. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Of course, the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first order. As I said, we are about 2 days away here. Going to give some of my final thoughts here about the Browns on the offense, the defense, just a general consensus. I know, the belief is, obviously with the Browns starting at pick 54, only 2 picks in the top 100, it could be a real slippery slope as far as getting, some premium talent. And look, you can get premium talent in the second round. You can get premium talent in the third round. Nick Chubb was once a second round pick for this franchise. Martin Emerson was once a third round pick for this franchise. So you can get ball players in round 2, in round 3. You kind of look at what the Browns have done to this point as far as, I'm just, going to go through some players' names here. And, some of the players, of course, the Browns have met. Quarterbacks, look, I don't think there's a chance in hell they're going to draft a quarterback, but obviously they did meet with Michael Pratt out of Tulane. Joe Milton, we all know about that. Some time spent with John Reese Plumlee, Bo Nix. None of this is going to happen. I will say, I'm not going to sleep on the name Joe Milton. And this is tough, though, because you draft a guy like Joe Milton, and if the Browns do have the intention to say, man, we think you could be a really solid tight end in the NFL, a guy like Joe Milton doesn't necessarily want to hear this right away. If it's day 3, if it's round 7, if it's a possible undrafted free agent status, you're looking for a job at that point. Maybe that has some more appeal to a guy like Joe Milton. Running backs, and I don't know how this is going to go. I think I am probably looking for a running back, probably a top running back, more than the Browns maybe actually are. We'll see. And look, the Browns, great. They hold things close to the vest. But they did, of course, meet with Troy Benson, Blake Watson out of Memphis. They had Jalen Jackson out of Villanova, small guy, into the building. Had some talks with Kamani Vidal out of Troy. Aiden Robbins, BYU. Audric Estime, they did meet, at some point with him, probably through the combine. Amani Bailey. I think you could really get a decent running back here. And I think the thing for the Browns, which is difficult for me, is, and look, we continue to talk about this, and we just don't know where Nick's at. And it's tough with that because, obviously the Browns would just want to continue this way. I think Jerome Ford is better than people give him credit for. In the same respect, though, I don't necessarily say Jerome Ford is going to be a full-time running back for the Browns. It's going to be interesting. I think they're going to draft a running back. Is it 54, 85? Is it just somebody they bring in on day 3? McClellan, the name Pete Smith brought up yesterday on his mock. If you didn't check that out, go ahead and check that out now. With the Alabama ties, obviously, to Tommy Reese, the new Cleveland Browns tight end coach. Wide receivers, there has been interest in Malachi Corley, LaDerrick Griffin, Troy Franklin, Ladd McConkey, and with some people I spoke to yesterday, there could be maybe a couple of questions as far as Ladd McConkey's health, which could make him maybe slide a little bit. But in the same respect, though, if he's sliding because of his health, is that something you necessarily want to get in on? They've had talks with Xavier Worthy, they've had talks with Jermaine Burton. Who knows how legit the Jermaine Burton issues are. People like to play these up now, and of course there's teams who purposely release this information trying to have a player slide to them. Of course, the Yale kid, Mason Tipton, local kid, local kid to Ohio. Look, Keon Coleman, you tell me Keon Coleman's available at 54, I'm running that card up. It's going to be interesting the way the wide receiver group works. I want a bigger one. I think the Browns have their smallish receivers, and Jerry Jeudy doesn't necessarily qualify in that, in my opinion. Jerry's a little bit, taller, not necessarily thicker. But, if they like Cedric Tillman last year, makes me think they probably would be in the big wide receiver body game. Could be a guy like Keon Coleman. Tight end, they've met with Jatavian Sanders. They also had Eric All in. All's an interesting guy. I think everybody likes Eric All, but again, we're talking about injury issues with Eric All and a lot of time missed in his time in college. So that's where it becomes difficult to put too much faith in him. But I'm not gonna lie, and I continue to do this, and I continue to look at it. Every time I look at the Cleveland Browns tight end room, I think I just get a little bit more confused, a little more, aggravated that it looks like it's a very weak room to this point. Obviously, David Njoku notwithstanding. I mean, David, star season last year. You think it is all systems go for David Njoku going further, but the rest of that room, man, it is just nothing. And I mean, nothing is there. So is it a guy like Jatavian Sanders? Who knows? Maybe it is Ben Sinnott. If you look at Brock Bowers, the measurables and all those things, and then you go down and you look at Ben Sinnott, I'm not sure there's that much of a major drop-off on the type of guy you're getting. Neither one is ideal tight end NFL size. So their roles could be mixed. Ben Sinnott did play some fullback early in his career at Kansas State, so maybe that is something he could do, for the Browns in another capacity, H-back, tight end, all of these things. Who knows? I just have a hard time sleeping on the Cleveland Browns and their interest in a tight end in this draft. Again, it's not a great class. It's not. But looking at what the Browns currently have at the tight end position, it's hard to believe they would not have some interest. Offensive line, Kieran Amageji seems to be like a very, very popular name. I think it was PFN's mock draft simulator where he was the most picked Cleveland Brown guy through their simulator, and I think that was through like 7 million simulators. I'm only guilty about 1 million of those myself, though, guys. But Kieran Amageji, I am a big fan. We've talked about Blake Fisher. We talked about Roger Rosengarten. It's going to be when the Browns want to be in on this tackle class. Brandon Coleman, this is a name we haven't talked a lot about out of TCU. And it makes me think a little bit, just going back a week or so ago, when the Browns went out and brought in Jermaine Irfidi. Jermaine Irfidi signed to this team, has over 20 starts in his career at right guard, has over 40 starts in his career starting at right tackle. Brandon Coleman out of TCU, left guard, left tackle, started 36 games over the last 3 years at TCU. He's been a team captain, massive dude, big dude, athletic. Could be a very, very appealing, guy to the Browns. And look, we don't know Dickerson totally yet. So we don't know all about him, his preferences and all that stuff. So a lot of this, we're kind of maybe going in blind. But you'd have to think, if you're a first-year offensive line coach, if you just signed one guy who has a lot of experience and is able to play right guard and right tackle for you, the Browns might have interest in a guy who can play left guard and left tackle for them and maybe be part of the future of the offensive line room in Cleveland. I am Jeff Lloyd. We're going to continue on here, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. I don't know if you guys knew, but Game Time is now available for purchasing MLB tickets. Look, the Mets, so far, so good. I'm excited. But Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I would go ahead and check out the flash deal. You save even more with an exclusive in-app deal on select seats ahead of the game or the event. If you like zone deals, this you can save even more. When you choose a section, Game Time chooses the seat for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Continuing on here, your latest Locked On Browns. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Of course, we appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen. The everyday crowd, if you're not a part of it by now, make a new plan, stand, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free, wherever you get your podcast. Now, we spent some time talking about Browns on the offensive side of the ball here. We're going to switch it up here. We'll get some final thoughts here on the defense. To the Browns, is it a 50-50 split? 3 guys on O, 3 guys on D? Maybe not. Could it go heavier on offense? I have a feeling that is going to be the tendency. It appears that there are more roster spots to possibly be had on the offensive side of the ball. But looking at some of the players that they have met with on the defensive side of the ball, there's been some interest, and these guys all appear to be day 3 guys. Maybe Isaac Adisa out of Penn State would be a guy that could be day 2, day 3. Good athlete. Browns met with him at the combine. They had Gabriel Murphy. There are Murphy twins. There's 2 Murphy brothers coming out of UCLA. They met with Gabriel Murphy. He was the one that came to Cleveland for a visit. Again, this is a guy that's going to go on day 3. Smaller school guy, Jablonski Green, South Carolina State. He did come to the facilities in Berea. This is where maybe business picks up a little bit. Miles Murphy, North Carolina's a guy they have spoken with. They spoke with Brandon Fiske out of Florida State at the combine. Again, I think he'd be a great fit for this team. I just don't think the Browns have any interest in drafting an almost 25-year-old defensive tackle. And then we get to the darling, Michael Hall, Ohio State, of course, Streetsboro High School, Streetsboro, Ohio. Michael's just a special talent. Michael has been an athletically gifted guy probably, since middle school. Had an amazing high school career. Team had a lot of accolades. He was able to bring a lot of eyes to the Streetsboro program, which eventually got Michael the opportunity to have Ohio State come to the building. And there was no way Michael Hall was saying no to Ohio State once they came to his school. He basically 2.5 years in, basically 5-semester kid at Ohio State. Michael is ready to go to the NFL, I think, for a guy like Mike. And I think the impressive thing for the draft process and his draft prep coach is somebody I speak with frequently. He had a lot of great things to say about Mike, but he was saying that as Mike was putting on the weight, and Mike played a little bit below 290 at Ohio State. Obviously, the NFL, you're looking to get closer to 3 bills. Well, Mike showed up at 299 for his pro day. The athleticism did not disappoint. Michael Hall was very, very impressive. Now, I just think Michael Hall, if you are going to give Jim Schwartz any pull, Michael Hall would be a guy that Jim Schwartz would have a lot of interest in. His size, his athletic ability. He already has the ability to rush the passer. This would be a guy that if Jim Schwartz had some pull, he would be all in on bringing to Cleveland. Tavondre Sweat, look, I got no interest with a guy for a guy 3 weeks before the draft goes out and foolishly gets a DWI. He's overweight, class clown, all the bad superlatives that you can put on a draft prospect seem to be ones that seem to go on to him. It's something that I would rather just pass on. I'm not interested. We went this route with Perion Winfrey in 2022. Browns obviously had their issues with Jadeveon Clowney. Maturity, players, accountability. These aren't, punchlines. These are things the Cleveland Browns these days absolutely live by. So I just don't see him taking gambles like this anymore. McKinley Jackson's interesting. I know this is a guy that John Costco talks about a lot. He could be a guy somewhere there for them on their day 3 selections. Juwan Briggs out of Cincinnati did come to the building. Again, doesn't make sense. He was in college a long time. A little bit undersized defensive tackle, but was a captain in his time at Vatech. Good player, good pedigree. I just think age is kind of the issue. Didn't have a ton of issues. It didn't have a ton of meetings linebackers. Ed Fawon, Oluwaseun Washington linebacker, older, had a good year for Washington, but older player. Again, this isn't guys the Browns are usually going and chasing after. So I'm not really sure how this one plays out for them in any way whatsoever. They also had in Andrew Parker out of Appalachian State. Incredible production. Appalachian State, certainly brings you some questions there as to what their interest would be. Now, of course, I've talked linebackers, and it seems all of a sudden Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M is a guy that is really, really on the rise. I've told you I brought up a couple of guys from Florida State. Tatum Bethune, I thought could be somebody that you have on day 3. Played pretty well for that team this year, but this is somebody that could come in, obviously, certainly late. Pete brought up the Missouri kid last night in his mock draft. He's a guy built probably more like an NFL linebacker, played safety at Missouri, tested outstanding. Would he be a guy that you would bring in with the hopes of bringing him closer to the line of scrimmage? Cedric Gray out of UNC, a lot of great film, a lot of great production. It's not a great linebacker class. It's not a deep linebacker class. It could be one the Browns avoid altogether. I mean, we do not know exactly what they think. Mahmoud Diabate, who they brought in as a UDFA last year. Charlie Thomas, another guy they brought in last year out of Georgia Tech. Just bigger, longer, athletic guys with a lot of capabilities, guys that got some opportunities last year. Are the Browns opening up opportunities for these guys, or are they looking for one more linebacker? And it's certainly going to be interesting because the Browns are going to write a check here. They're going to write a check to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And the Browns are a team that have never put much financially into the linebacker position. Now you're going to have a big name linebacker in that linebacker room. Are you going to surround him with guys on rookie contracts to offset the money? Certainly could be a way the Browns are looking to do this. Could be a way the Browns are certainly looking to handle this. So the linebacker position, again, I'm not sure it's something that the Browns are going to be in a rush to take care of. No, Cleveland's not going to sleep on anything. If one of their guys falls into their lap, they're certainly going to take them. But I'm not sure linebacker is a big thing for them. Other meetings as far as defensive backs, Jordan Hicks out of Washington State, great player. And always be leery of a positional group where there is no consensus top player. And Jordan Hicks out of Washington State is a guy that's been mentioned, but nobody's putting his name to it. You have also Beanie Bishop out of West Virginia. Everything checks a box as far as what the Browns like, the long, lean press corners. DeCameron Richardson also, now he's a guy I've talked about a ton. Did make a trip out to Berea. He's long. We talked about him last night with Pete. Pete had him in his mock. I've been talking about DeCameron Richardson for a long time. Age fits. He's willing to hit. He's willing to tackle. Did not find his way to a lot of interceptions or turnovers. Athletic, long, great in press coverage. These are all things that Jim Schwartz just says yes, 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 and yes to. So you wonder, where the interest level is. And I know everybody, they have all these DBs, and again, as Pete said, and you kind of think about it a little bit, somebody coming in and competing against the Anthony Bell. Well, if the Anthony Bell isn't good to stick around year 3, you kind of understand, and you maybe kind of starting to reset the clock there a little bit in a situation like that. Cornerback, if DeCameron Richardson comes in, is he challenging Khalif Halassi for a roster spot? Yeah, it's okay. It really is. It's okay. And the Browns, obviously, the decision to come down formally soon, whatever, as far as what their intent is as far as Greg Newsome and his 5th-year option. But you still have the issue that you're going to have Martin Emerson Jr., and you're also going to have Greg Newsome head towards free agency at the same time. That is 2 years from now. And it's hard to say where Denzel would be in 2 years from now as far as a player, his contract, the Browns' interest, his interest in remaining in Cleveland. There's just so many factors that go all into this. And it's weird with the 5th-year option. The way it works is because essentially you're making a decision, you're making a decision 13 months in advance. It's really, really, really difficult way to play it. It's where the NFL goes, and it's obviously all for player protection. And if these players have earned this money, they get that money. I get all that, but it does kind of put an NFL team in a difficult spot because you're basically making a decision 13 months in advance on a player's availability or your interest in a player's availability for your team. Just some thoughts on defense. I do think the Browns will draft a corner. I think the Browns will draft a defensive lineman. I'm not sure what other market they will be in, and why will they draft corners? Because the Browns draft corners. That is what they do. Your latest Locked On Browns rolls on. Appreciate everybody for being along here. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. What would you do if you had extra time? Would you get something off your chest? Look, we all go through things, and sometimes it's hard to be the bigger person. Sometimes it is hard to keep things to yourself. Well, you want to know what? Sometimes the best thing for you is not to keep it under wraps. So if that coworker's annoying you, let them know it. If you're not happy with the fact that your kids take advantage of you sometimes, let them know it. I'm not going to curse. I'm not going to say anything. My kids are teenagers. They're monsters. They will pull us and they will try to get everything they can out of us. And what do we do afterwards? We usually go for therapy, and therapy can be done differently for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked on. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Closing out your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd. Of course, we appreciate you all for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you're a bunch of filthy animals, but you're my filthy animals. Be like the filthy animals. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. And, of course, the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, you continue here, and obviously some final thoughts here on the offensive side of the ball, some final thoughts on the defensive side of the ball in pertaining to the 2024 NFL Draft. Tomorrow's episode, I will give you my final Cleveland Browns mock draft. I really, really think the Browns can fix. They don't necessarily have needs. Everybody has needs, but there's teams out there with needs like starting offensive linemen needs. And that's, something where I think Andrew Berry has been really, really smart in his time and his tenure so far as a Cleveland Browns general manager, is to go into the Browns and to go into the draft. And it's not saying, well, I need a starting right tackle. It'd be nice if I can bring somebody in that's going to compete with the guy that I think can be the starting right tackle. It's nice that I can bring in a guy that can compete for playing time at the cornerback position, linebacker position, pass rusher, D tackle. And you try to get yourself to, hey, I've got a pretty good idea who's here now, 2 days before the draft. I have guys that can make my 53-man roster. But now I get to infuse some youth here and, a little exuberance and a little excitement into this franchise through the NFL draft. And where is that going to work for me? And look, the Browns, you're going to see the first 53 players go off this board, most likely for Cleveland. Then you're going to see another 31 players go off the board before you choose for Cleveland. Then you are going to see 71 players go off the board before the Browns are next slated to make a selection at 156. It's a little rocky. There's no question about it. So you can't just go in there saying, well, I have to have a guy that can do this. And you basically say, you view it like a six-pack. I hope when I get to 54, I got 6 of these guys I can choose from. I hope when I get to 85, I got 6 of these guys. And who knows? They might get to day 3 where they hold, I think it's 206, 227, 243, and say, there's nothing here for me. And, why am I going to risk a draft pick on this? And if I can do what they did last year, if I can send a pick for this year's draft to the Baltimore Ravens and I can get a 6th round pick in next year's draft, it's a gamble and it's an opportunity. It's something I'm going to do to improve my franchise. I think the biggest, and I continue to say this, I think the biggest impact player they can draft would be a tight end. It could also be a defensive tackle. Now, I tier positions. Defensive tackle is a very important position to me. And for as many years I watched the Cleveland Browns where they had no defensive tackles. And maybe I got, maybe got a little overzealous. But my thirst was quenched last year, but I wanted even more. I want as many defensive tackles as possible. What is wrong with 6'4", 295 to 300 pound guys who are athletic as hell and can just consistently beat the daylights out of guys like Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson? Those are guys I am looking for. Corner, it's just such a big, impactful game with the amount of times that the ball is in the air these days. The Browns do a good job of identifying corners they want. They also do a great job in helping those players develop to become even better players. Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, obviously. And, look, is Greg Newsome going to stick? I don't see any reason to move on for Greg Newsome. I don't think there is any trade out there where the Browns can acquire a pick where I think it is something that's going to substantially improve this team, where all of a sudden now I got to go in the draft and I got to find somebody that I hopefully can replace Greg Newsome. Why would I move on from a guy who's been really, really good in the time he's played? He can play inside. He can play out. He was a guy that had some injury question marks in his collegiate career, and he is a physical player. He plays hard. And the three of them, they just play so well in unison, and it's one of them makes a play, and then the other one wants to make a play, and then another one might, and I think they just inspire each other, they motivate each other, and they get better together collectively, because I think of the bond that they have But there is that type of jealousy. Oh, he got his. All right, well, you just wait. Next time that ball's near me, just you wait. Just you wait. Just you wait. So you watch and want to see these guys play and develop. It's always interesting when a team doesn't have a first round pick. And look, last year we obviously waited to wait late in round 3, see what the Browns could do. But I think they can do a pretty bang up job. It's going to depend on how some of these positional groups play out. How deep does the tackle run go? When does the offensive tackle run start? Same thing at wide receiver. Tight end, I just don't see how this could not be a major focal point. If you can get a player like Ben Sinnott or even Jatavian Sanders, Pete and I are probably going to have a little wager on this one. I would take Ben Sinnott in a heartbeat. I would probably even take him at 54. I just think I'm getting a player that can do a bunch of things for me. Versatility is a skill. One of the reasons I like Jaheim Bell later is one of the reasons I probably like Ben Sinnott as much as I do right now for the Cleveland Browns. It is going to be a wild ride. Like I said, episode yesterday with Pete Smith, we got his final mock, some just general final draft thoughts from me here today. You're going to get my final mock draft tomorrow. I appreciate you all so much. I appreciate everybody that makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you don't need anything special. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.